What's going on, everybody? This is Zeno here, and today it's another Ice Crash build. That's right, it's the Occultist Facebreaker Ice Crasher, because we've never done that before, so why not? For all of you guys who don't know how I work, well, I love this freaking skill. I play it probably too much and have an unhealthy addiction for it, and I've played down almost every single Ascendancy, so I guess it was time for me to try down on the Occultist. So, quick little gear recap before we go into it. I'm Tri-Curse. I have Enfeeble on hit on a 784 pair of Facebreakers. This is hardcore Synthesis League, patch 3.6. Just kidding, this is patch 3.5.7 because Betrayal's still being updated. No kappa. Anyways, so I have a level 21 Herald of Purity for a lot of Flat Fizz. I just got it. I'm level 90. I have Temporal Chains, Frostbite, and Enfeeble on hit gloves, as well as a almost perfectly rolled Rizor Coil. This thing is so nice. Lycos today and some other Flat Fizz gear. So let's go. You can take a look at my gear in the link down below. Should have like my profile link and Twitch page where you can watch this build live. For anyone who doesn't know, coming from YouTube, I almost primarily only stream. I only make YouTube videos when I have time. Currently enrolled in full-time university, and I freaking still play the hell out of Path of Exile, but with what limited time I have, I spend it on doing Twitch. It's hard to do both if you don't hire somebody, but I like this build enough to go ahead and just show it off. So first things first, Delve is so freaking awesome. I love it right now. I have Consecrated Path here for traveling, and it's also my Onslaught buff. The beautiful thing about this build is I have Elemental Overload because I have Lycos today. I have Profane Bloom and the Curse node in the Occultist tree, which is allowing me to both shatter bodies and blow them up with chaos damage. So I don't have permanent corpse removal, but I have a lot of corpse removal, which is pretty nice. It's not full DD immunity, but it's decent. Oh man, I almost attacked Nico there. Thought it was a mob. No, it's just Nico plinking away. Ooh, I like that map. Give me that shit. I use Flame Dash when I can't conk Path. I do run Blood Rage, and my Orb of Storms applies both Enfeeble, and it'll help out in Elemental Equilibrium maps, and it also gets my Elemental Overload procs. So, pretty nice. When I'm in a party, I actually have a pretty decent amount of cast speed, so I can throw that thing down pretty quickly because I have Deed Below, which gives cast speed. I also have Frenzy Charges, which gives cast speed, which has some naturally in her tree. My tree's a little bit wonky, but it works. My health is my weakest thing in this build. The absolute worst thing about this build is my HP. So we gotta just work on that. Alright. Ethereal Flask is quite disgusting, just because of the fact that I have pure physical, 90% of which is being converted to cold, and then that cold is now elemental, so I get a double dip, as in this gives physical damage at extra as chaos, and elemental damage extra as chaos, and I can actually deal a decent amount of damage because I have Void Beacon, which is both cold and chaos reduction. And that's my two main sources of damage in this build. If I had Elemental Overload up, when I pop this guy right here, I have 10k Chaos and 45k Cold top end. And that's without any other type of extra damage as Chaos modifiers, which I could still make room for, such as, what's it called? Sin's Rebirth, and or Taste of Hate can give us extra damage as Cold, which can give us more Chaos, and or Unholy Might from a Jewel, which I need to roll still. So this build's a bit odd. I just wanted to play Ice Crash. I wanted to play something on an Ascendancy I've never played before. For all of the edgelords in the YouTube comments, anyone who's actually watched this video and anyone in the YouTube comments out there that's like, LOL, why Ice Crash Occultist? LOL, back clear speed there. They probably didn't watch this part where I said I just wanted to play Ice Crash on a Facebreaker, and I've never done it on Occultist, so I was like, hey, let's do it. So it's just for fun, okay? This is not me trying hard like that level 99 guy who just died on the ladder. Rest in peace. This is me just goofing, okay? I like to goof in this game. So let's go over the theory craft portion of this video. So the first things we're going to talk about is I absolutely rushed Malediction. So your normal lab will make it so enemies are no longer hex proof. So this is huge. There's only like 3 or 4 monsters in this game that are truly curse immune. Behemoth is like the most common that I could think of. Maybe Old Joffrey. I don't know. New Joffrey, can you curse him? I think if you curse him, he does that move. So he can be cursed. So curses got changed a while back, and they came out with this mod called Hexproof. Hexproof is curse immunity, unless, of course, you have something that could penetrate Hexproof. So it's not real curse immunity. So there are like 3 or 4 sources, I think, in this game, or 2 sources in the game you can have Hexproof. I know of 2 off the top of my head. There's a chest piece called Cosprey's Will, and then there's Profane Bloom. I think those are the 2 ways. There might be a 3rd or a 4th I'm unaware of, because there's so much power creep in this game. GGG's got like 100 employees, so there's a lot of people coming up with interesting ideas and throwing it into the mix. Let's talk about Malediction. So first off, you get Curse Effect. You get 15 here, 5 here, and another 5 here. So Curse Effect is huge. When I kill an enemy, for each curse on the enemy, I gain 8% of my non-chaos damage is extra chaos damage for 4 seconds. Enemies who curse have Malediction. Now let's read what Malediction is down here in parentheses. It says enemies with Malediction deal 10% reduced damage. And take 10% increased damage, which is a multiplier that is additive with things like Shock or Terran Shiver, things like that. Val Lightning Trap as Shock. So let's see, I can apply additional curse as well, and on top of that, my curses can always be applied unless the monster is truly curse immune. So, Malediction. So this is 10% reduced damage. It's like a mini Enfeeble, but it actually works on bosses. So if you do curse them with Frostbite, for example, that boss is naturally going to deal 10% reduced damage. So this is like a solve, this is the curse class. And because of that, monsters are always, their damage is always multiplied by 0.9, so long as they are cursed. So totems can't be cursed, and curse immune monsters. So totem bosses, plateau boss, I could freeze and stun it because Facebreaker and Ice Crash have enough damage. But if you're like 5 linked or 4 linked and you're trying this build, a totem could very well slap you in the face and there's nothing you can do about it because you're not cursing it. So be aware. But you do have this. This is a debuff aura that's pretty damn strong for 2 points. It's one of the strongest ones, specifically for this build too, because I deal a lot of cold damage. Like most of my damage is cold, but I deal a pretty heavy chunk of chaos too. So Void Beacon's awesome. And then there's all these healing modifiers in this game that most people aren't aware of, or if they are aware of, they don't realize how insane Void Beacon is at negating them. The first one I think this is absolutely busted for is Temple of Atsuwatl. There is a Pools of Restoration that can give monsters some pretty decent heal over time. And this says no, you don't have any. So that's great. It's like a free room. You could tier 3 it every time, get an extra item if it works that way. It's like a complete negate to that room for Temple of Atsuwatl. Any type of extra regen aura on allies have regen naturally, things like that. Anything that can have double life regen, this is pretty handy. Wasteland boss, for example, he has his consecrated ground that he heals from. So little things like this, it's pretty insane for. Frigid Wake. Let's talk about Frigid Wake. So I'm not sure if this is worth keeping versus actually going Withering Presence. I probably won't go Withering Presence. Oh, man. So if I go Withering Presence, I can actually use Withering Touch, because it gives your physical damage as extra chaos damage, and then you use this with it. So I would have to just like swap out a support gem to do that. Like Wed. Instead of Wed, I would use like Withering Touch. But Wed is probably a lot better for me because I have like 90% cold damage from my physical damage converted. So, I don't know. Ruthless is pretty disgusting too, because getting really big heavy stuns, and it actually makes use of this reduced enemy stun threshold. Facebreakers do have that stat. But Frigid Wake does this. Freeze lowers enemy action speed to 0, preventing them from acting. Duration is based on cold damage of the hit. So depending on how hard my hit is, that's how freeze works. But something to notice up right above that, we have nearby chilled enemies deal 10% reduced damage with hits. This is not damage over time, just hits. That's still massive. So if I chill a boss, which I always will do because I have Ice Crash and a really, really buffed Frostbite, they will deal 10% reduced damage with hits and 10% reduced overall damage. So that makes them deal 20% reduced damage on top of the Enfeeble, which I apply. Even though Curse, the Enfeeble isn't as strong against bosses, I do have a decent amount of Curse effectiveness, and it stacks quite nicely with Frigid Wake and Malediction's reduced damage. So suddenly my 6k health isn't that bad because I have a lot of effective life from mitigation. All monster damage from hits is multiplied by 0.8. That's pretty damn strong. On top of whatever Enfeeble gives. So maybe like 0.72, 0.76, somewhere. I don't know. Somewhere in there, that's my guess. Some POB guy out there help me out. But defensively speaking, I'm doing pretty good. And just raw mitigation between Enfeeble, Malediction, and Frigid Wake. Normally, Frigid Wake and Malediction don't go together. But unless someone's playing a life-based Vortex build, Cold Snap build, Mind Over Matter type build, I guess that would be the best combination. Usually it's Vile Bastion, Frigid Wake. That's like a really popular one. People do go Withering Presence, Malediction for like Death's Oath builds, life-based Death's Oath builds. Cane of the Unraveling builds, whatever. And then Forbidden Power here. No one really ever touches this guy. It's decent for certain specific builds. I've messed around with it before, so it's okay, but meh. I think Frigid Wake might be the best one, but I've thought about using this too and maybe trying to switch it up to more Chaos-centric. But then I'm not freezing as much, and freeze is stronger than just dealing Chaos damage. So I'll probably stick with Wed and rock it out. So in my skill tree here, I have my pathing is so odd. So first things first, Winter Spirit is so mandatory because this is where I get 40% of my conversion. The only problem with this is GGG thought it'd be really cool to do this. Cold spells have 10% physical damage converted to cold damage. Why is it cold spells and not just cold? Like, why is it gotta be spells? Could be cold attacks too. Like, it doesn't have to be just physical. Like, I think this is just so sloppy. It's like one or two skills in the game. Like, what the hell? Specifically a cold spell, and it has to be physical. So, like, Glacial Cascade, I guess? But 2 thresholds, or you could still go Winter Spirit and then have 40%. Like, I don't... GGG, why? Like, what? The worst part of my tree is this guy right here. I'm doing this because I want the Chaos Res, but I need this little bit of mana reserve so I can actually play the build. Now, I could go with an Enlighten, but I'm already, like, strapped on freaking gems. Like, I'm trying to figure out... Like, I'm absolutely strapped on my gems. Like, I can't get... Yeah, like, in terms of min-max, I would rather have Enhance in here and put 2 more points in here, if that's possible. But I need Blood Rage, so I can't... I guess I would have to drop Coiling Strike, but Coiling Strike's pretty big. It's like I'm so strapped for gems. I need Herald of Purity always. If you're playing Facebreaker, this is mandatory. If you're playing Pillar of the Cage God, this is mandatory. With the exception of maybe Gruthkul's Pelt, but still this is mandatory. I'd rather that. Gruthkul's Pelt never goes with Pillar, but it might with Facebreaker. You lose Herald of Purity, which is a lot of fizz. 27 to 40, dude. That is like, you have Bringer of Rain for 25% of your mana reserve and a gem socket. You are wearing Bringer of Rain. 20 to 40. This is 27 to 40. This is better than Bringer of Rain. Pretty insane and power creep. Enduring Cry is mandatory. Flame Dash, you need to clear terrain. Fortify, Onslaught, Consecrated Path. So this is my whopping 3 link, but because I have 50% Fizz converted to Fire, and I have 40% Fizz converted to Cold here, I have a decent amount of elemental damage, and I have Elemental Overload, which is giving it a fair amount of damage. And oddly enough, Fortify does give damage. It's a little bit, so it's not bad. And this helps me keep up Onslaught against bosses too, because I have to keep up Fortify against bosses. So it's actually, Onslaught support gems change is really big. So happy they changed it. I have to quality so much stuff, so yeah. So on top of all that reduced damage I take from Frigid Wake, Enfeeble, and Malediction, I'm also wearing a Lore Reef, so I have 78% max res. They did nerf this thing, rightfully so. It needed it. My fizz damage roll is humble. It could be better. It's 7 to 33, so I have a really nice top end on both, really. I'm 3 off on both, so I have an average damage of 3 I'm missing. It's like barely anything. It's like half of a joule. I have the perfect res roll. My life is 22, which is not good. And then I also have it 6 linked in a decent elemental damage roll. So I'm going to have to mess with this thing, but this is such a divine sync. I do have some divines, but hold. I need to work on my gear here. This is like my weakest stuff. Like this is just res. These are just resistance slaves. I mean, look at this thing. It's like tri-res with crappy fizz and decent life. Honestly, this thing is not bad. It's like a perfect slave for the time being until I'm steel ringed out. So this is a risky play using this belt, but I think it's just crazy. I think this is like one of the most absurd items in this game. This is probably the most top 3 most underrated items in this game. And thankfully my YouTube isn't like stupidly big because I want to keep buying this item. So please don't compete with me, people. I mean, you're going to compete with me, but golly, this item. So first off, Rizor's Coil functions, it's like very deceptive. What it does for you in terms of beneficial versus its downside, it's like night and day. The upside is so much stronger than the downside. Now, this belt has a high variance. So let's take a look here at the variance. So first things first, the less minimum physical attack damage can be as low as 30, which I have, and as high as 40, which you do not want. However, it's most important to have the 40% more maximum physical damage than it is to have the minimum on the minimum physical damage. So let's explain how this belt works. So if you take something like Tidebreaker here, or Facebreaker, so I guess anything with breaker in its name, or any type of two-hander, all memes aside. If you look here, I have 583 top end and 178 low end. So just specifically speaking of this weapon, before any type of multipliers or skill gems, just belt plus weapon. That's all we're going to talk about right now. So obviously, when you start getting multipliers, ends up being a lot different. But just the 178 and the 583 we're going to work on right now. So I do have a perfect roll, and it's very important. Like I said, the 40% more is most important. If you get a 39% with like 39% more with like a 34 less, that's okay. If you have like a 40% more with a 35 less, that's okay. You want the top end the most. Try to work on your low end as well, but let's just do the math here. So 178 is going to be multiplied by 0.7 because it's 30% less. So multiplied by 0.7, and now my low end is 124. So now this weapon's low end is 124 instead of 178. Now let's do the same for 583, and we're going to multiply it by 1.4. So 816. My math could be a little bit off here, but it's going to be similar to this if my math is off. If anything, it would be off here, not here. So let's just add these two together and figure out the average damage now. So 816 plus 124.6. Divide by 2. So the average damage of my weapon with this belt on is 470. Multiply by 1.2. The DPS of this weapon with this belt is 564. Okay, so let's go now with Tidebreaker as is. So 564. All right, we have 178 plus 583. We're going to divide the average and get the mean, and then we're going to multiply by the attacks per second, which is 1.2. And we have a 456. So if you look here, 564 to 456, it's over 100 DPS top difference just with the belt. Now imagine how this works when you actually add in all of your multipliers from all of your gear, all your support gems. So let's, for example, let's check out Meginord's. Meginord's is a comparable belt. I actually have another Rizor's Coil. We can use it as an example too. So I could show you, this one's a 40% top end with a 35. I replaced it with this. So if you look right here with Meginord's, my top end, just standing right here, is 32k cold and 15.5k minimum. All right, when we put on this, let's see what our top end goes up to. We had 32, now we're at 45. So we just gained 13.5k top end, and we had how much low end? 15.5, and now we're down to 10.2. So we lost about 5.5k and we gained 13.5k top end between a Meginord's and a Rizlathos Coil. Now Meginord's also has flat fizz, kind of similar to that of Rizlathos Coil. So really the only thing that we're testing the difference on right now is the maximum and minimum rolls. So that's just what it does in terms of damage. Let's talk about the other stats. It gives you 50 life when you stun an enemy, and when you're playing a ruthless build, you're guaranteed to stun bosses even, and you're gonna stun packs even without a ruthless hit, but a ruthless hit will guarantee you stun everything, and if the pack has like, 50 mobs right there when you have an AoE, 50 times 50 is a shitload of health, people. So it's actually like it's not like Val packed, but it's an instant life source that you can get for just punching a whole pack. When you're in a breach or an abyss or delve where there's a lot of density, a lockbox, this is huge. Reckoning also stuns. So my Reckoning will proc Rizlathos Coil. Like I'll be in a temple of Atsuado, a Reckoning will proc in an incursion. It hit like just a whole line of monsters, and because of the busted corpse explosion of Profane Bloom, I'll just like clear a whole pack and just like I'd even punch them, I'd even use Consecrated Path on them. So I'm pretty happy with how wonky this build is, but it's still working out. In terms of skill tree, your jewels need to be high life, high flat fizz. Avoid bleed, I guess, is okay, but I don't know if this is the final tree. That's why I never put my estimated tree in here. Just look at the character's build in my profile. And also the skill trees change often, so the chance of this skill tree being the exact same in future, patches when some people might view this, it is what it is. But look at my profile down below, and you could check out my page there. I do not use path of building. I do everything just theorycraft. I just pull up a freaking skill tree and I talk, and I go to the wiki and I look. And the wiki's pretty dated. There's a lot better sources out there. I just try to go old school because I don't know, new players, when they come into this game, they get overwhelmed, and anyone could understand skill tree wiki. It's like a good start. I do need to improve upon this mana leech. I'm thinking about maybe picking up acrobatics to get just full insane tanky tank. I don't have any armor anyways. I run endurance charges, and I'm thinking of going Taste of Hate. So Taste of Hate works really well with acro, so I'm going to have to figure out how we're going to respec this. And I think it's going to start with something up here, if I can get an enhance or figure out how I'm going to do this. This is like my most inefficient, I would say. I do have 2 AoE nodes to pick up right here. I have another jewel to pick up right here, so it's more life. I very well could go Alchemist, so there's like so many different paths for me to go. If I can get +1 curse on my neck, I could pull out of all of this and just go 1, 2 and save 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points, which gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points. So hey, +1 curse on the neck sounds pretty good. So hopefully my next video, if there is a next video of this character, because I do play hardcore, I do have these things sorted out. +1 curse neck opens up phase acro. That's how min-max this game gets to be. If you have any questions about the build, thanks for watching. That was a tier 9 Tropical Island. This is not the highest character I've had this league. I played the Blast Rain champion again, and I died to some bullshit. I played a Tidebreaker Slayer, and he was crazy. He died to Internet DC, and this is my 3rd character of the league. My Atlas is 112 of 159, and we are not even a month into the league yet. So, synthesis is shit, by the way. I don't even do it. I feel like this is patch 3.5.7, Betrayal 2.0, I guess you can call it. How is this even synthesis? Feels bad, man. Alright, guys. See you next video.